What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. And before we get started, I just wanted to say, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with all things related to Godzilla, the MonsterVerse, or anything moving forward, as well as what we got going on here at Scrye. That out of the way, I just wanted to, do that simple little plug. Let's get into the meat of this topic. Now, today, I wanted to talk about the other monsters in the MonsterVerse, and it's been a topic on my mind for a while now, really trying to understand and piece together this universe, because with Godzilla versus Kong being pushed back, I feel like they're getting ready to really make a grand finale for the MonsterVerse, considering that this could be the last installment in the franchise. That being said, the other monsters in the MonsterVerse have really intrigued me, and I've really been trying to figure out where they came from. And the reason why I say where they came from is, yes, I know that they said that Godzilla and a lot of these titans, they're as old as the Precambrian period, which is interesting because I don't know how any of these monarch scientists have figured that part out yet. But one thing that really got me interested in where they came from was a scene that I saw in the making of Godzilla stuff, where they were showing some of the CGI effects and whatnot, and it was a picture of the Anunnaki with a whole bunch of human worshippers underneath Godzilla, praying and bowing, with Ghidorah and Rodan to either side of him. And when I saw this, I messaged Mike Daughtry about it and asked him if these were the Anunnaki in the hieroglyphs, and he said yes, meaning that there are other aliens besides Ghidorah in the MonsterVerse that interacted with Godzilla. It really got me thinking about the other monsters and where they really came from. And if you want to know a little bit more about that whole the ancient aliens inside the MonsterVerse, I have another video. I'll put the link in the description, but I have another video where I talked about all that. But I really got to thinking about these other monsters and where they came from. I started thinking about their powers and why they had them, because the running theory that I have is that not all the titans in the MonsterVerse are natural, or I should say were here from the beginning or anything like that. I think a good majority of them were actually created by the Anunnaki in the MonsterVerse. Let me tell you my train of thought on this. See, we know that humans are actually older than 5,000 years old, what we believed we were for the longest period of time. We know that we actually our ancestors go back several 100,000 years. But when you look at the history of the Anunnaki and what some scholars have put together, according to the history of the ancient Sumerian people, which was the first recorded civilization that had like writing and stuff in history that we could actually go back and study and refer to, as well as, the Babylonians, the Akkadians, all that kind of stuff. Most of these places originated in the Middle East, but that doesn't mean that that's the only place where the Anunnaki visited. But that being said, in the creation myth, the Anunnaki were said to have come to a planet where it was mostly ice, and only in the middle of the sphere that they were looking at, across the middle of the sphere, was it green and brown. So most of this planet was ice. Anyway, you flash forward to about 12,000 years ago, or I think it's 12,000 or 13,000 years. I have to look that up. It's somewhere in between 12,000 and 13,000 years ago. There was a great flood. Many cultures and civilizations reference it as the Great Deluge, and I believe the Judeo-Christian, and most of the mainstream religions reference it as the flood, the one that Noah rode out in the ark. So if you think about that, right? So we'll take that history lesson, because the other cool thing about the MonsterVerse is that they're drawing from our natural, real history and trying to incorporate these monsters into it, right? That's what this series is really all about, is making sense of it all. So when you take that into consideration and you look at monsters like Scylla, who is a giant, I would say crustacean, not insect, but more of like a crustacean type creature with an octopus mouth or whatever, and the crustacean-like, crab-like legs, with the ability to spit out liquid nitrogen and slow down the melting of the polar ice caps. See, this is the thing. In our history, in the history of the Earth, something like a ice age takes a really long time to happen, right? It's evolutionary period. So like from it freezing over all the way until it's completely melted away. It takes a really long time. And 12 to 13,000 years ago, there was an abrupt temperature change, an abrupt climate change, an abrupt change, which oddly enough is the same time around the flood, right? And I started thinking about it. A creature like Scylla, if the flood was happening, or if the ice age was ending, the glaciers in the northern, southern poles were melting at extreme rates and stuff like that and flooding out the land that these Anunnaki had found and started cultivating so that they could establish colonies and mine and get resources from our planet. If they were advanced enough to predict this, they could have easily created a biological being like they created us that could do the things that they needed it to do, like slow the ice melting, so that way civilization, culture, humans, and themselves could continue existing. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense to you guys. Maybe I need to like rephrase it or something, but basically all the monsters with their special abilities, like Behemoth and the poop and all that kind of stuff, I believe that they were engineered or designed that way. Because I mean, when you look at Behemoth and you look at Scylla and the way they're designed, they look like hybrids of natural creatures in our world. And the Anunnaki themselves were stated to have created beings that didn't exist here before, hydras and chimeras. And even in the ancient Sumerian texts and stuff, they brought things like sheep and cow to this planet. Like, those aren't native creatures here. Obviously, they've evolved since they got here, but that's the thing. Like, it's interesting when you study all that kind of stuff. And then you see the similarities, and I really do think that Michael Daughtry has researched a lot of mythology and is really into our ancient past and history and the legends that come from it, because I see so many similarities and things with Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and the things of our past, like the Anunnaki and the hybridization of giant creatures or monsters that ancient heroes used to fight. Stuff like that, you know what I mean? And the Mutos, right? Okay, for real. I honestly I can't think of a creature that is like the Mutos that exists in the real world, because the Mutos have the potential to extinguish all life on this planet, and I don't think this planet would naturally create something like that to balance itself out. So I think the Mutos were honestly created to fight the Godzilla species and other titans that were rebelling against the Anunnaki in the old ancient Titan war referenced in the Godzilla Aftershock comic. So I don't know, that's my theory. It makes sense to me, but if you guys disagree and think that the majority of the Titans that have these weird, strange powers and look weird like this, that if they were just naturally here, if you think that's the theory, okay. But if you agree with my theory, let me know in the comments down below, because I really think I'm onto something here, and I'm grasping at straws to find some validity. But when you look at how the other Titans are designed, and when you look at how Michael Daughtry referenced our natural and mythological history, it just makes sense to me. But let me know your theory, where you think the other monsters from the MonsterVerse came from, if they're natural, if they were man-made or alien-made or whatever. Leave your comments down below. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, as it really does help the channel to grow and helps you keep up to date with everything we got going on here at Scrye. New music coming in the future, so be on the lookout for that. And that's it. I will see you in the next video, and long live the king.